ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಾನು ಮಣಿಭೂಷಣ್ ಡಿಸೋಜ, ಸಹಾಯಕ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕ, ಗಣಕ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ವಿಭಾಗ, GFGC ಮಂಗಳೂರು. ಇಂದು ನಾವು ಜಾವಾ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಿಂಗ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಈವೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ವಿಸ್ತೃತವಾಗಿ ಕಲಿಯಲಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಘಟನೆಗಳು ನಡೆದಿರುತ್ತವೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಘಟನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಸಾರಿ ಜ್ಞಾಪಿಸಿ ನೋಡಿ. ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಜನ್ಮದಿನದ ಆ ಸವಿನೆನಪುಗಳು ಜ್ಞಾಪಕಕ್ಕೆ ಬರುತ್ತವೆ. ನಾವು ಜನ್ಮದಿನದಂದು ಕೇಕಿನ ಮೇಲೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಕ್ಯಾಂಡಲ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಟು ಅದನ್ನು ಆರಿಸಿ ಸಂಭ್ರಮಿಸಿದ ಸವಿನೆನಪುಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನೆನಪಿರುತ್ತದೆ. ಇನ್ನು ಕೆಲವರಿಗೆ ತಾವು ಹೈಸ್ಕೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿರುವಾಗ NSS ಆರ್ NCC ಕ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದ ಸವಿನೆನಪುಗಳು ನೆನಪಿಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತವೆ. ಇಂಥ ಹಲವಾರು ಘಟನೆಗಳು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಿರುತ್ತವೆ. ಈ ಘಟನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಈವೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರೆಯುತ್ತೇವೆ. ಫಾರ್ಚುನೇಟ್ಲಿ ಜಾವಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಬರೆಯುವಾಗ ನಾವು ಈವೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಎಂಬ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟನ್ನು ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ತೇವೆ. ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಜಾವಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಈವೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಎಂದರೆ ಏನು ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕಲಿಯೋಣ. An event is an action which are initiated by the user while interacting with your program. We know that in Java we can build GUI application, and when we build the GUI application, user can interact with many of the components which are part of our application. The simplest action could be a user clicking on a button. So when a user clicks on a button, this is an event for our program. In the same way, a user can select some of the items from a drop-down list. This is also an event. How do we handle events in our Java program? Now let's look at one of the GUI component that I have here. This is a dialog box, and you notice that this dialog box has many components. I can select any of the tabs over here, or I can select any of the item from this drop down list, or there are many buttons which are here. I can click on any one of these buttons. When a user interacts with any of the component on the GUI, your program must know which is the component that generated the event. For example, if I click on this OK button, then my application must know that user has interacted with the OK button, not on the other components which are there on my GUI. The next thing that my application need to know is what type of event is generated. So when I click on the OK button, events get generated. This event is not the same as selecting an item from the drop down list or clicking on any of the tab. So there are different types of event depending on different types of action that the user can perform on the GUI component. Now let's see how do we handle the event if a user clicks on a button. We know that in order to create a button in Java, we have to get an instance of that button. So this code simply creates a button with the open text inside it. When you run the program, it may look like this. Now if I click on this particular button, what action is generated? In other words, what is the event that gets generated when a user clicks on this particular button? This is what our program needs to know. In Java, the event that gets generated when a user clicks on a button is called as action event. So when you click on the button, a action event gets generated. Now let's look at an analogy. We are all using WhatsApp. Now in order for you to get a notification from any of the group, the first thing that you need to do is either you or somebody else has to add your phone number into the group which is available here. So there is some group here and somebody, either you or somebody else, must add you to that particular group. Once that is done, whenever there is a new notification, you will get that message on your phone. To put it in a simple word, first thing that you have to do is get yourself registered with the group, and whenever there is an event, you will be notified. The same analogy is used when we develop an application in Java. And this analogy in Java is called as event delegation model. Now let's look at this event delegation model. How does it works? We know that in Java, whenever a user interacts with a component, events get generated. Now these events will not be listened by every component. So only those components which have registered with the source can only listen to this particular event. The analogy is same as that of your WhatsApp group. Only you will receive a message from your group. Others will not, those who have not registered, will not listen or will not get the notification. So how does the event delegation model works in Java? You have to have an event listener which can listen to the event. And this event listener must first register itself with the source, saying that whenever an event occurs, it is interested in listening to the events that are generated by the source component. When a user interacts with the source component, either by clicking or selecting or doing some action, events get generated. This event will be notified to the event listener. This is because the event listener has already registered with the source, saying that if an event occurs, it must be notified about that particular event. And when the event occurs, the event listener will be notified about that particular event. When an event listener receives the notification, it uses one of its method called as event handler to handle the event. So when an event comes, it delegates that event to an event handler which will perform the required action. Now let's look at how it can be implemented in Java. In order for us to implement the event handling, we have to first implement the event listener. This event listener must be able to listen to a particular type of event. For example, when a user clicks on button, the event that gets generated is the action event, and the event listener must be able to listen to that particular event. Let me give you an analogy. All of us listen to FM radios, and the FM radios in our city broadcast either in Kannada or they broadcast in Hindi or maybe sometime in English. Suppose tomorrow a new Japanese company enters into the market and then they start broadcasting their services in Japanese. How many of us will be interested in listening to the Japanese broadcast? Probably not many of us. What is the reason? The reason is we will not be able to understand their language. In the same way, not all the action listener will not be able to listen to all the type of events. There are specific type of listener which can listen to a type of an event. So we have to first choose the appropriate listener for our event. In our case, we have to find a listener that can listen to the action event. Fortunately, in Java, if you want to listen to the action event, then you have to have a object that must implement one of the interface, and this interface is called as action listener. So any object that has implemented the action listener can listen to action event. So this is as simple as that. So if at all you want to create a listener for your button click event, then you have to create a class that implements action listener. We know that any interface will contain some abstract method, and one such abstract method which is there in the action listener, in fact this is the only one method which is available in the action listener interface, and that method name is called as action performed. To put it in full words, we have to create a class that implement action listener, and then we have to override one of the method called as action performed. If you are able to do that thing, we will be able to create a listener that can listen to action event. Now let's look at how to perform this in action. So let's take a class. You can give any name to this particular class. I have given a name as button listener that implements the action listener. And there is one method inside this, and that method is the action performed. And within this method, you have to write the appropriate code that will be used to handle the action event that gets generated when the button is clicked. Once you do this, you will be able to create a action listener. So with this, you created a action listener. What is the next thing that you are supposed to do? The next thing that you are supposed to do is take this action listener and somehow register that action listener with the button. So how do I perform that one? To register the listener to a button or with any component, you need to use one of its method. So let's look at how this can be performed. First, you create an instance of your listener. So in our previous case, we have created the button listener, and now I create a new instance of this. So I create a new instance of the listener, and then I am supposed to hook it to the button. How do I do that thing? I call the action listener method on the button. Assume that this is a button. So I call the action listener on that button, and then I use the button listener to register the listener with the component. Let's look at this in action. So what do I have here is I have a JFrame, which is nothing but a frame, and I am going to create a instance of a button. So I'm going to just create a button here. Let me try to create an instance of that button. So I create an instance of that button and I call the button as open. So what I have here now is I have a frame, JFrame. Inside that I have a JButton. So I create a button here and I then use the open. So I create a button with the name open here. So this is what I have done. Next thing that I am supposed to do is create a event listener and then somehow hook that event listener or register that event listener with that button. And I am going to do that by a simple method called as add action listener. So I take this button and I call the add action listener on this button. Now where is my action listener? I am going to create a new instance. In other words, I am going to create a new anonymous inner class called as action listener directly within this method. So this is what I am doing. So here if you notice, this is a new object that is created because I'm instantiating the action listener directly, as well as I am overriding the action performed method here. So this is nothing but anonymous inner class. Once I create the button here, I need to add this button to the JFrame so that it is visible to the user when the application is running. So what is new about here is we are creating a anonymous inner class directly within a method. Let's put our thoughts into action. Now we are going to create an applet and we are going to handle a mouse click event in this applet. To do so, let's go to the NetBeans. I have my NetBeans open here. I'm going to go to the file menu of the NetBeans and I'm going to select new project. When I select a new project, I'm going to get the new project dialog box. In the new project dialog box, under the categories, I'm going to select Java, and in the projects, I'm going to select Java application. I'm going to click on the next button and I'm going to give a name to my project. I'm going to call this as my demo Java application. You can give any name to your application. I'm going to finish it off by clicking finish. NetBeans is going to create a new project for me and it's going to add all the necessary packages and classes to my application. You can see in the projects, you can see that it has created a new application called my demo application, and also you can see that it has created a package called as my demo Java application. Inside this, it has also created a Java class called as my demo Java application.java. And what you see here on the right hand side is the same application.java that has been opened for you. So here you will notice that it has added a class with the same name, my demo Java application, and it has created a main method. As we are aware, when we develop the applets, we don't make use of a main method. So let me add an applet to my project. In order to do so, I'm going to go to the package and I'm going to right click on this package and I'm going to go to the new. Now you notice over here, when you click on new, if you have already created an applet, NetBeans is going to show the applet option directly over here. Now if you get that, you can directly click on this applet. Suppose if you don't get the applet in this listing, you can always go to the others, the last option over here, the others, and then when you click on it, you're going to get a dialog box called as new file. Under the categories of this dialog box, select Java, and on the right hand side you can select many options. I'm going to select applet. You can also select the JApplet. For this demo, it does not make much of a difference. Let me click on new and then let me give it a name to my applet, and I'm going to call this one as my applet. That's all you need to do, and I'm going to click on finish. Now when you click on finish, the NetBeans would have created a new Java class for you, and it has created the class with the name my applet, which extends out of applet. And we are very familiar that the applet has a important method called as init method that is used for initialization. So all your initialization code has to be written over here. Now what is that we are going to develop? In our application, we are going to create an applet. This applet will have a text box and a button. When a user clicks on this button, I want to show a message in this dialog box. That's all I need to do. So I need a text box, that is the text field, and then I need a button in my application. Let's try to put both of them in our application. So I'm going to go to my application or my applet over here, and I'm going to create a text field in my application, and I'm going to call this one as text message, and I'm going to create a button, and I'm going to call this as button show message. I need to create an instance of both of them, so I go to the initialization and I'm going to initialize both of them. So I'm going to go to this text message and I'm going to say new text field, and I'm going to select a width of 25 characters. In the same way, I'm going to start with the button, and I'm going to create a new instance of the button, and I'm going to give a message saying show message. This is going to be the label that is going to be shown on the button. Now before I do anything with my applet, I'm going to set the layout for my applet, and I'm going to create a new flow layout for my applet. Once I create that thing, I'm going to add my two components. One is my text message, and I'm going to add the other, and that is my button. So this is what I have done now. I'm going to save my file, and I'm going to right click on this file. Anywhere you can right click, and I'm going to say run this file. You can also use the keyboard shortcut, that is Shift F6. I'm going to click on this. You will notice here that you have a applet with you. So this is the applet that you can see over here, and we have a text box and we have a button. When I click on this particular button, I want to show a message in this area. To do so, I have to first handle the click event. You're all familiar that the click event is handled by action listener. So let me go to the button now. So I'm going to go to the button. I'm going to go to the button, and I'm going to say add action listener. Now this is the one, this action listener, that is used to receive the action event. So when I click on this button, I want to receive the click event. So I'm going to say action, add action listener, and here I have to give an instance of a class that implements action listener. So I'm going to create a new class over here by typing new, and then I'm going to say action listener. Now you notice over here action listener, this is very interesting one. This action listener, if you look at here, is a interface. Action listener is an interface. So I can directly instantiate this action listener. So how can I create an instance of this? This is the place where your anonymous class comes into picture. So when I select action listener, NetBeans is going to give me an option saying that are you interested in creating a new instance of a class that implements the action listener? I'm going to click enter over here, and what you notice in this is I'm going to just get it to the next line so that it is easy to view. And there is an exception saying that it is there is no method that is available. I'm going to just remove this exception over here just to make the things easier. So I'm going to go over here, and you notice here that you have a class altogether. So you have a new instance of the class called as action listener. Now remember, action listener was a interface, but I created a class out of that, and this particular class is called as anonymous class. The reason for this is, reason why we call it as anonymous is because there is no name associated with this class. You will also notice a strange thing over here, and that is we have the outer class, that is the applet class, and within this outer class we have one more inner class. So I have a outer class and then I have a inner class, and this inner class is a class that has no name. So we call this one as anonymous inner class. So this is how we create a anonymous inner class. So let's go ahead and let's see what we are supposed to do. I'm going to run this file again to tell you what is that I am supposed to do it. When your applet starts, so your applet is here, you are going to click on this show message. When you click on this show message, the action listener that is associated with this particular component is activated. In particular, a method within this action listener called as action performed gets activated. Any event related information that is generated when this particular action gets activated is also passed as an argument to this particular method. So for example, if you really want to know which is the location of the mouse, that is x and y coordinate of the mouse, where the click happened. Suppose if you want to know that thing, that information, or which is the component, what was the state, and all these details are passed as an argument to this particular method. Whatever you write within this method will get activated when the user clicks on this particular button. And what is that I am supposed to do is, when this button is clicked, I want to show a message in this text box, and that's what I need to do. So let me code here to show a message. I'm going to go to this particular method, and I'm going to start with my text message, and I'm going to say set text, and I'm going to say welcome to event handling. So this is what I need to do. Let me save my application and let me run my application. let me run my applet. When I run my applet, this is what you see here. Now when I click on this button, the action listener gets the action. It's going to call this method, and within this method it's going to set a text to the text box. This is what it's going to do it. So let me click on it and let's see. And you notice over here that it is showing you the message. I'm going to delete this text to zoom in for you to see. So I click on the show message and you see the message. If I delete it, again if I do it, I'm going to get it. So it is as simple as this. This is how we are going to handle the events using anonymous inner class inside Java. Now let us summarize the topic that we have covered today. We started with a nested class. It is a class that is defined inside another class. Then we have studied about anonymous class. It is an inner class declared without a class name. We have also seen the concept of an event. It is an action initiated by the user interacting with the program. Finally, we have seen event handling. It is a mechanism that controls the event and decides what should happen when an event occurs. Now that you know how to handle events, can you think of creating a simple application called Calculator that has 2 text boxes and a label and 4 buttons, namely add, subtract, multiply and division? A user can type any number on the 2 text boxes, and when he clicks on add or subtract or multiply or division, appropriate results has to be shown on the label. Can you think of doing it? Well, try it.